And I realized that you actually have a really thick accent. So I know
Oh,
you're
it's
from
horrible. Oh my god. Oh my god. Wait, it's funny that you said that because I just saw this thing on like Instagram and TikTok and stuff, and it said like the mob wife fucking something's trending, like, and I'm laughing because I'm like, yeah, like now people want to wear fur coats or whatever, but I'm like, but we're still getting fucking shit on for the accent. Like, but I follow so many people like that, like just especially from like Long Island and stuff, and I'm like, I think their accents crazy. But when I can't even record like videos. I try to like I'm like talk like a normal person. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but you literally sometimes you can't understand people
That
when
is
they're
true. That is true. But I feel like you should still just have your accent. Because my thing,
yeah,
I have like, if I really just talk normal, I have kind of like a southern accent.
yeah.
But then it throws people the fuck off because they're like,
What is that?
so like I do the same thing where I try to talk normal, but I also feel like now at this point I've lived in so many different places that like at one point I'll have a southern accent, then I'll have like a more like Jersey accent, then I'll have
Yeah,
but I think
yeah.
it's authentic, like who gives a fuck? Like they'll either understand you or they don't. And I also think
Or they won't.
yeah, but I think it also gives you like a special kind of charm, you know?
Yeah, it's well, the only thing you just have to stay away from is the talk to text on your phone. Don't ever try to use it. That's
Yeah.
it. Like, but
Especially
it's true. Because I watch people and I'm like, I don't even think like I was watching some girl from Brooklyn the other night and I'm like, her accent's cute. And then I'm like, why do we think our accent? I think just like it's something about your when it's you too. Like I hear people with southern accents, I'm like, that's so cute. Like, but people may be like, self-conscious of that. Or like I saw a woman recently say she feels like people think that people who talk with southern accents are uneducated, but she was going through like linguistics basically on how the southern accent came to be. And it was like this whole deep dive into like how the English people came here and then how the French kind of settled in the bottom and like just like the drawn out like different southern draws that you have. And I think people sometimes think of an accent and perceive it to be uneducated. So I think that is kind of where people sometimes have like a reserve of speaking in their own accent.
and I
But
think too, like with celebrities, like newscasters, they always talk extremely plain and extremely clear. You know, there's no personality.
yeah. Oh, definitely. They're like it's yeah, I mean, but they want that. And then if you play back some of them all at the same time, they say the same exact thing in the same pitch. I
I've
saw a
seen that.
video, you saw that video and it like
Yeah.
zoomed. This is
Yeah, and it's like 20 different newscasters and they're literally saying the exact
yeah,
same
they
thing.
zoom out and it's like everyone's like da 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 da, and I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, this really was freaky. Like, I'm like, we weren't just thinking these people are like robots.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, something. I'll leave that one alone. Oh.
But you know, I do like that movie Anchorman. Anchorman's pretty hilarious. I like Will Ferrell. He's a good
That
one.
was 70s. 70s. They were like, I don't even, that was like, oh my God. That movie's so fucking hilarious. Some of those movies, like from that period of time, are so funny, and you could like never get away with fucking making them today because of how everything is. And it's just fucking hilarious. The characters in that, like, I don't really know that funny. The second one wasn't really as funny, but the first one was hilarious, dude.
Yeah, I know. I feel like they take, well, we all know that people in Hollywood are not very creative. They pretty much just take something that was successful and they try to like
Right.
recreate it and like flip it. But it's
Every
just like, I feel like the whole thing, like, oh, if it was filmed today, like they'd be in trouble. I don't really know if that's true sometimes because I feel like everyone I talk to is politically incorrect. They don't give a shit. Like they laugh at the dumbest stuff.
I think you're right. And when they try to overdo it, I think you're right about that because I feel like all the things that try to be too like correct just fail.
Yeah,
Because people love fucking South Park. People love making in fun of shit. And South Park's been able to get away with it because they make in fun of everybody.
everybody. Equal opportunity haters.
Everybody. Like in like the old ones, like are really fucked up. But like the even the newer ones, I'm like, damn, like I can't even believe this saying this shit. Like
Yeah, and
because
that's another thing too is like,
people are normal. It's
yeah,
all
because
or like
yeah, and I feel like when you're watching it too, like if it offends you, change the channel.
no, because people are programmed and they don't want to change the channel.
Like, what the like, even sometimes, like, the other day, I posted this video, and I was like, "I'm gonna send you love and light," and somebody commented and was like, "You didn't even ask permission to send me love and light." I was just like,
The internet is so fucking sometimes like, I read shit and I'm like, "Who the fuck would comment that on someone else?" Like, it's just even if you like, you really think that you're gonna comment that? Like, get off my fucking page.
I
It's
know.
scary. You know what's the scariest, internet I feel like the scariest app that you see people on Twitter. With that, people are fucking wild. Like, they have no problem, like, berating complete strangers. They'll, like, tweet, like, a picture of me and be like, "This ugly bitch," and you're like, "Oh my god." Like, I just can't believe the audacity of people, like obviously it's to get attention or whatever. They're just like, did that really offend that person that much? Was she like gonna you ruin the person's day because you came up and said, "Let me give you love and light"? She's like, "Get the fuck out of here." You could
I
just
think just a lot
scroll.
I know that's what I said, but I think a lot of people, like, they really do have, like, entity attachments or they're just so, like, closed, like, their third eye is so closed. Because a lot of times when I do get negative comments, a lot of times it doesn't even make sense in relation to what I posted, so I think it's just these people that are just so negative and disgusting, and they can just do whatever they want because it's not real. I mean, it is
Yeah,
real, but it's not, like, I'm not gonna knock on their door, be like, "Hey, bro, like, fight me," you know?
yeah. Hi, let's go. No, I think you're right though. I think it is easier for obviously it's easier for people behind a computer to say shit. And half the time when it's people talking shit, you click on it and it's like a fucking fake profile. They
And I
don't
think
have,
they do that on purpose, though, because they don't want it to get back to who
of
they
course,
and
because
it's
then
usually probably, like, the most ugly people, the most weird people that are doing it. It's never somebody, like, cool.
evil fuckers. They really are though. It's like you're like, why? That just like, yeah, you have like that's like some inner work that needs to be done. Like, cause no person that has any, especially if you're like in the spiritual community, you're commenting like shit on people. Even like even like certain things I'll see and like, of course I'll have thoughts in my head, but I'm like, I would never think like, let me just like fuck your day up with my opinion that nobody asked for.
Yeah.
But then people's other side is like, oh, you put yourself on the internet like you asked for it. It's like no one asked you to write a negative comment on my thing.
But it's also too, like, I get what you mean, like, sometimes I'll see somebody's post, and I'm like, "Oh, I don't know if they know what they're talking about," or, like, whatever, but then I try to come back to a place of, like, compassion and also
Yeah.
understanding that, like, maybe God told them something that God hasn't told me, you know? Maybe they're on their own thing in
Or
their
like
life, and I'm
maybe
right too.
they're a part of their path and they are soon to find more shit out. Like even I'll read stuff that people will post like in different, spiritual communities or even like about history that's like completely wrong. As I like study history and then I'll be like, I would never write on the thing. Actually, in fucking 22 BC, like who the fuck am I? Like,
Yeah.
you live, do you? Like,
And we're always learning. Like every day I learn something new, you know, but I'm also willing to correct myself too.
well,
That's a
that's
big
and
thing.
that's the learning part of it. Because what good is like are the experiences or going through like different like things in your life or like situations if you don't learn. Like if you don't learn, then you're gonna repeat yourself over and over again. Like as long as you can acknowledge, like, oh, maybe I was wrong, or like maybe I didn't understand, or maybe like I was, out of place or like out of pocket, or like maybe I just judged somebody. Just like if you come back to yourself and you're the one that is kind of judging yourself. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, like I maybe at that time I believed that. Like that's okay because that's growth, but the
Mhm.
not learning from the fucking shit. Let's go. It's really like why I don't know that was what I feel like is a really big problem. I think that even within like the healing processes in the communities and people like there's so much like on both sides with like people are like, oh, don't talk about your trauma. You're gonna like relive the trauma, and then other people are like, oh, get it out. I think things are just so different for everybody that it's hard to like take in all the information, especially that's like online, and immediately have a decision like what to make. Like I remember reading things like years ago. I'm talking like 2000 like 10 and stuff about like binaural beats and like frequencies and like I kind of was just like, okay. and like bypassed it. And I was just like, oh, like that's cool. That's interesting. And then like years later, when I really like realized like what it's pretty common now that people know you listen to different HZs to like get into different modes, or like you use the healing bowls or tools, or it's such a common thing now. But like I was kind of like, oh yeah, healing frequencies. Like you don't know at what point what you've learned is going to need to show up in your life too, I feel like.
Yeah. That's
Especially like I feel like you would understand that too because you've gone through like, multiple different like ideas of like spirituality and stuff. Like I remember like when people were really like there were certain people that were wondering like if their fucking tarot cards are evil. If there's and remember like there was a whole and it was not like a few people. It was like overnight like a lot of people like went into this like kind of and like whatever they got out of it. I'm sure people but even people I know were like, "Oh, I'm not touching the shit anymore." And then they were like a few months later were like, "Okay, like I think I just had a bad experience or like associated this with a negative energy." But it was all at the same time. So like I don't know what happened during that
I
time.
feel like there was
You
some type of
that?
spiritual attack. I do. I feel like there was some type of spiritual attack on a lot of people, and I think that we were just thinking like, what's the one thing that's more spiritually like a focus in our life, and it just happened to be tarot, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And it
all
was
were kind of just like, yeah, I got rid of all my shit. I was
a
like, dude,
lot
I'm fucking
of
Christian now.
a lot of people did. It's very like but I think too that that's what happens when people when you gain new perspective or something or come back to maybe a religion that you were before or when you gain another like more interest or understanding of certain religions like certain things don't relate with you or resonate with you religiously and I think especially at first people are really rigid and like hard on themselves in the way where they're like oh get like you can't do any of it like because I saw that a lot too but then I saw like people come back and be like well this isn't inherently evil it's like whatever I'm doing with it
Yeah.
because I saw that with I'm talking like I remember during that time it was like at least 20 people I knew at the same time and I think you're right. I think there was definitely like a bad energy overall. I think even in the like spiritual community.
I
And
agree.
it's like everything else. There's like it's the same thing on how people you're like, how could somebody be in a cult? Like, because if enough people fucking believe in shit, it could lead like some people are gonna think they're like in control or like I don't know, like I think that there was getting like the spiritual online community is getting way too much attention in general at that point.
I think it's some people don't know enough. They don't know like that you have to have really strong intentions. I think some people don't even realize that they could be interacting with entities that are could really be anything. And for me it was more just
That.
the people I was around were communicating with entities that I wasn't fully aware of how bad they were.
Mhm.
And so I just think
Oh,
that
yeah.
my practice had been tainted because I was surrounded by those energies.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
and so I think I just was like, I want to get rid of anything having to do with it. But then once I kind of like calmed down, came back to my
Mhm,
center, I do feel like I did reconnect with my more like Catholic roots. But
mhm,
I also understand that if I have a deck of cards, I mean, nothing bad's going to happen, right? It's up to me and how I
mhm.
use it and my intention.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and
it was scary.
that's really when you real like that and I think that comes with actually knowing the power behind the things that we do, that we say, like,
It's very real. Everything
it
is
it
fucking.
it is it's amazing because it's the law of attraction is such a crazy like I remember when I was in high school I read that book The Secret and I saw like and then people were like that's bullshit and then I'm like there's no way this is bullshit and maybe like some of the way they were selling it or like them maybe trying to like monetize on telling people this but it really is a law of attraction like that just exists on the earth like words, spells. It's like you're spelling. I mean, people know that. When you say it, you're just like, huh, how simple is that? But it takes a long time to like. I recently just found out that the word I can never pronounce this. When you have like a spiritual diary or journal, it's like grimoire or
Oh,
however you say
grimoire.
it. Yeah,
Grimoire.
like okay, it's French. It's
Mhm.
but so grammar is actually the root of that like whatever grammar is, like us like spelling, using like talking conversation in writing and in reading in grammar, that's comes from that word actually comes from the same word as grammar. So it's crazy when which it makes sense. You're like, oh duh, like you're writing in a journal, but like you're like, oh, okay, like but but the grimoire or whatever the fuck it is a magical journal.
Mhm.
So it just shows that all grammar is magical, and that's kind of what's been like they left that out. Like it's not
Yeah,
just what you're writing in your magic journal, it's like what you're saying to yourself in your head, what you're
yeah,
reading, what you're taking in, like and like that I can totally see that like, you being like surrounded by people that have a darkness attached to them from whatever is and what's sad to me is I think like I said this to you in a text message, but I think that like people really underestimate what the fuck they're getting into with that shit. Like in no one's right mind would they want to call on some evil entity that causes fucking chaos when really people crave peace. There's no unless you're like psychotic, which maybe people are too, but I'm just saying no and most of these people aren't though. Most of these people are like normal people that are like into fucking metal. They're into fucking like, you know what I mean? Like death metal. You're
yeah,
into I love Ozzy myself, like, but yeah, I can agree that some of it gets fucking dark and but that's like the gimmick of the whole thing. But what that does is it kind of like normalizes it in like regular like subcultures and communities. Like you have
yeah.
people in the suburbs, like
It's like when people jokingly are like, "Yeah, hail Satan, bro." Like it's like, "No, no, I'm not. You are. I'm not. Like I'm not hailing nobody."
and like I and it's funny that you did that because that like why do people do that like in pictures like and like all like even when I was younger people would be like I don't even fucking know you throw up like a peace sign which is also not good. I'm not going to get into that. Yeah,
Oh,
that the peace sign is this is like this way, like it's like a war cry. So the sign that you show for peace is actually like the rune, which means to like start in war.
that makes sense because you see it like whenever I see pictures, for instance, like Yemen, like and there's bombs, all the kids are like,
And they don't even know. They're just like, hi, that's fucked up over there too right now.
that's one thing too is that what I'm trying to learn about. I'm trying to learn about mudras, like the
Hmm.
different way you like put your hands mean something. Like I think this one is like a power, like you're
Yeah,
powerful. And if
that's
you,
a well, yeah.
yeah, and
Even this
if you watch,
too,
oh yeah,
that
because
they're
I've
like
even
open.
seen interviews. Like I've seen interviews with, like Elon Musk and like
Yeah,
really powerful people. And they're always sitting like that.
you do. It demands respect in the room. It demands power and attention. It's crazy. Like I don't know too much about it. Some of the stuff I've seen is interesting, like body language and learning. Like a lot of us are so like myself. I like talk with my hands. Like I'm so like kind of unaware sometimes of like what I'm doing. Like maybe I'm like touching my hair, but like those people that are successful, powerful people, they are very aware of like what you do with your hands, like how you walk into a room. Even the thing where like when you shake someone's hand, you're supposed to give them like a very firm handshake and
Mhm.
like you're supposed to look people in the eyes. Like these are like social cues, but also like power moves that people basically like. And that's why when you have two people that are like that, it is interesting because you do see like kind of an energetic, like when I'm like that and you're like that, it's like we're like, you can
Yeah.
feel tension. Where like there's other people that are like, they see a person in power and they like kind of submit even without knowing it.
Hmm.
Like putting the head down or like, like going like this or
And
body
then also,
language.
I feel like that goes back to like we were talking earlier off camera about like rich people versus poor people and like social.
Hmm.
If you're wealthy, you've had more of an etiquette training. Like usually they
Yep.
say poor people have bad manners or just
Yeah.
you know, and it's not even really anyone's fault. It's just rich people are taught, hey, you need to carry yourself this way,
Mhm.
interact with people this way. But more normal or poor people,
Yeah.
it's more just like, hey, y'all, what's up?
Yeah. And yeah, and it is and you think to yourself like why would that be something that like especially people that are like, they pass down wealth and generational wealth or like whatever they call like
Like, look
old
at, like, the royals. Like, the royals have a certain criteria of how
yeah,
you
things
date.
you cannot do, things you're told you can and cannot do. Like it's it's funny like throughout cultures etiquette is so strange. Like I know Japanese people have no problem when you slurp. they want you to slurp the noodles. They slurp the noodles. Everybody's slurping the noodles, but they're also, you go there and they don't really like tattoos. You
Mm-mm.
know what I mean? They're very like, there's different like cultural etiquette no matter where you go. But one thing, you're right, and you see it with like wealthy versus like lower class people, is that there is no etiquette training, because where would you get it? Where would you use it?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, everybody can benefit from knowing these things, which is why now we're all lucky that we have the internet. Like, it's a gift and a curse, but like, you can learn so much, like so much. Even like different ways to like train your mindset and stuff, like, and that's another thing that also goes along with like etiquette and like rich versus poor, or it's really a mindset. And like, what I've realized, and from being around people like of both, because I grew up around mostly poorer people and I know rich people, and you just see there's what it is with people of wealth, or even not wealth, but like upper middle class people, there's a real difference in the way that their families kind of teach them about things in a lot more serious way. Like, I've seen, like, I just feel like, not that they're not strict like poorer people, but it's a lax like idea, and that comes from like, because you have to work your ass off because you're maybe not around. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people are raised by the internet or raised by television when their families have to work 24/7. Where it's like, it's very like, you're very structured when you're wealthy. But then when they're not, you see people's like rich kids go off the rails and stuff because
And I
like
think
they're
that's because the family isn't really there for them on an emotional level because
too.
everything's very, like,
That's
superficial, like, you need to look good, you need to act right, you need
true.
to sit still, but we don't have any personal connection because I'm more worried about how we look.
Mhm. Oh, no, definitely. And I think that it can go, like, either way in both. Like, it's funny, like, the pride that you'll see too a lot of poorer people hold, and they don't wanna admit their mistakes, or, like, I mean, "This is the how we are." It's like, that's not just how you are. Like, you're like that because maybe of things that have happened to you, or, like, traumas, or, like, I'm really big right now on, like, figuring out how to change my brain around, like, money and in, like, funds, because like, that's a really important thing for people to understand, like, because when you tell people like, oh, like, there's an infinite amount of wealth in the universe and everybody like deserves it, people are like, yeah, right. But it's true, you know what I mean? But it is true. They're like, yeah, like, even like, it's hard to wrap your head around the fact that you could literally have anything, but it is the mindset, and a lot of times it's like learned behaviors. Like, for example, if you're rich, you have never not had money, so you don't have that one weird trauma surrounding money. It's not the thing that you think about. Like, you have other problems, like, no one's perfect, you have other like relationship problems, whatever, life problems, whatever the fuck it is, health problems, but you don't have that like inherent anxiety around money, which immediately gives you like, puts you at an advantage in the world because you're at ease. Where like, people that like, the whole like, don't have a pot to piss in mentality, which is what we refer to it as around here, because everybody would be like, I don't have a pot to piss in. I don't know if you've ever heard
Yeah.
that. And that comes from, this is insane, that comes from when people had no money, they would pee in pots and sell it to tanneries that dyed leather, because like, you can use urine to dye things. And the joke is, you're so poor you don't even have the pot to piss in, to bring to the tannery, to get a couple bucks for your urine. So like, all these like sayings we have crazy background meanings, but like, but that's one of the things. And when you were in like, it was kind of like what me and you were talking. You repeat these like negative things, or like people in your family kind of repeat these negative cycles or habits, or even just things that they say. It really does affect you. So like, I've been working recently on like trying to like retrain my brain around money, because there's even like jobs I've had, like, I work jobs like where I bartend, or I waitress, or like, I do gigs, or like certain things that it's never like on like a like, I mean, it's pretty steady, but it's not like what you would want like it to be steady. Like, you don't know. So I'm actually looking into doing something else soon, but I'm trying to figure that out. But it's more like, it's interesting to see that you have to retrain your brain, and that you have to like constantly do it, because you fall back into like these patterns that like, I don't know if you deal with that. I don't know, like, I mean, what you were telling me how you grew up, so I kind of understand, like, maybe, like, that a lot of us have these, like,
Yeah.
weird things around, and not just money, but, like, it's weird because it's really a worthiness thing at the end of the day. Like, if you know all the money and abundance and prosperity in the universe is infinite, then why wouldn't you receive it?
Yeah. Well, I
It
mean,
would
they say that from age 0 to 7, that's where like I think like 95% or like a crazy percent of your programming comes from. So you're pretty
Mhm,
much always operating from whatever you saw, felt, learned, or experienced from 0
mhm,
to 7. So of course, like for instance, part of my life, I was raised by a single mother, so
mhm,
things were not the
same.
easiest. That's kind of what I remember. And then even just growing up, like there's recessions and different things like that. And then,
Mhm,
some point I was like homeless for a little while. So definitely like I have some issues too, but
of course.
like I think affirmations can really help at first if you
Oh,
really
definitely.
do it. But then it's also like instead of being like, "Oh, I just had to pay a bill," like, "Thank you God, I just
Yeah,
paid."
that I have the money to pay that bill, that I just
Yeah.
paid that bill. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I do with my rent. I'm like, all that money flying away. I'm like, thanks, thank God, thank
Yeah.
God.
But it's also
It,
too, like I feel like it's little things that can really help with money. Like for instance, if you go and they charge $2 extra for the guac, get the guac if you want the guac. I mean, really.
oh, I'm never skimping on guac or food.
Me
One
too.
thing that,
Honestly, money goes to food, all of
me,
it.
especially now, this shit's crazy, and I'm one of those like freaks that like keeps my receipts. It's the math isn't mathing from the summer.
But you know what?
It's
I feel like holding on to receipts can be bad money energy though,
oh,
because you're
definitely.
like focused on the money going out.
Oh, it definitely probably is. I like hoarding receipts. But it was funny because I was looking, like, comparing to certain things, and I was like, that's fucking wild. Because I followed like certain things that are like, oh, like said that this would happen, that it would get this crazy, that it would, and I'm like, yeah, bullshit. And then I like kept a couple from the summertime, and I was just looking, and I'm like, the same shit. Because people are what's crazy to me is like people are like gaslit into thinking that things aren't that
Bad.
crazy. Like, you shouldn't think of everything as bad, but like you should acknowledge that, like, like rents are going up, cost of living are going up, wages aren't going up. Like, there's things that you could acknowledge,
Yeah.
like that. Like,
That's what I've
no,
been saying the last couple years. I feel like if people really want to be successful, you have to have some type of like side hustle or your
you
own.
have you have to have something like multiple side hustles. You have to have something that you're going all in on yourself. And I think, like, as fucked up as it seems, I think that all of the things that have happened that have pushed people to this point are really to recognize, like, stop fucking working for people. Like, stop being like, I mean, yeah, don't go fucking quit your job, guys. Like, I'm not gonna do that. But like, it's like, realize like that, you're like just another like number. Like, you're another fucking brick in the wall. Like, if you have a passion, you actually can.
1000%. Like, I mean, and really doing anything too with the internet. You could literally film yourself like picking your nose and you could get like a million views and like make so much money off of it. Like, it's really insane. Like, the unlimited amounts of ways you can make money and the unlimited amounts of money that is out there. But you're frozen, sister. You're frozen. You in the frozen zone. But yeah, anyways, maybe that's a sign we should stop it here. But I think we had a really good chat. If you guys like her, be sure to follow her on Instagram. Check her out. She does readings sometimes, I know that. And sometimes she has like little crafty things that she sells. But she's really awesome. You should give her a follow. I always learn a lot when we're talking. So definitely give her a shout. And I'm going to call her after this and make sure she's good. Bye, guys. Oh, I guess I shouldn't do this anymore. No more peace sign. Yikes.